tricolor, shout for liberté, égalité, and fraternité.
That's it. Always, man. Endorse the Frenchies. See whether you can get see you can get something. Although I think the French do allow dual citizenship, don't they? So you should be all right, mate. Um,
I
I
think I
mean,
get it for being Scottish, right?
that's it. As an honorary as an honorary
The old
Frenchman.
alliance, the Scots and the French are good friends,
That's it. The very oldest one.
both enemies of the
Actually,
English.
indeed so. That is the root cause of friendship, mate. Who do you jointly hate? But French friends, let us know. Is it possible for Adam to gain French citizenship? Because basically, I think we should give him something for his just conspicuous endorsement of all things French. I think it is possible. I think France do allow dual citizenship, but please do let me know whether that's the case. Anyway, folks, we're live, everybody. Welcome to Brain Food Live on Air. It is episode 265, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. And today, we're very excited to have this conversation. Reason why, by the way, is because, and I think, Adam, you've noticed this as well, over the last couple of weeks, we've noticed a few of our friends, contacts, and what have you, starting to get a few new jobs, some more positive type of updates on LinkedIn saying, you know what, I'm out of the green badge type of stuff. I've actually got a new role, etc. For me, it was just very encouraging because clearly it's been a very challenging 18 months or so for the recruitment industry. So fantastic to see that. And I hope it's a sign, it's a big trend. I hope it's a trend rather than just me and you sharing an anecdote independently. And as a result of that, perhaps, this topic is going to be great because it's all about what do you do in your first 100 days of a new job? How do you make sure you actually hit the ground running, but also not load on too much pressure on yourself so that you end up, making mistakes that you otherwise wouldn't have made. So that's the topic. New job as a recruitment leader, the 100-day plan. We've got some wonderful guests on the show to talk to us about their new job opportunities. And we're also going to bring on Adriano Herdman to talk about some of his work as well. He's done a brilliant, I don't know whether you follow Adriano, but he's done a wonderful series of one pages. Basically, he's there for the one pages, but he did one for the 100 sort of day plan. I thought, you know what, we need to have a chat with this guy. So that's happening as well. All right, cool. Listen, before actually, let's just do some sound checks, folks. Let me know whether the audio is fine. Let me know whether you can hear me okay on Crowdcast. Drop me a line on the chat whether the audio and visual is okay. I think we're breaking a record in terms of the numbers of people who might be live streaming this show. So I'm doing it. I think Lumi's doing it. Rob's doing it. Julie's doing it. Essentially, lots of people are now live streaming Brave Food Live on their own LinkedIn via LinkedIn Live. If you're watching it on any of those places, welcome to the show. And let us know there whether you can hear and see us okay. Let's just give us an emoji or drop us a comment into the comment thread there. Okay, some people seem to be saying, okay, that sounds all right. Excellent stuff. Okay, before we kick off, of course, we always have to thank our sponsors for Brave Food Live on Air. We can't run this show without sponsorship. Every week, a company steps up and says, you know what, we want to keep this conversation going. And this week, it is one of our perennial sponsors and one of the great businesses that have been in the ATS space over the last 10 years or so. It is Greenhouse, folks. Greenhouse, they have been a top-tier applicant tracking system for a long time. I think in the 2001 survey, what do recruiters want? Greenhouse were out there as the number one selection from the Brainfood community as the tool they want. We're going to rerun that survey, by the way, this year, specifically on that question. So hopefully we'll see what the updated is, but I'd be hugely surprised if they're not up there battling for first place again. So if you're looking for a modern ATS that can do all the things you need it to do, greenhouse.com, you should check it out. Okay, we have Adam Gordon. Great to see you, Adam. I know you had some trouble with the car. But just a quick update on this. What happened? You got towed or what? What's the situation?
No, my battery was flat, and I've got no idea why. And the AA guy had no idea why either. The AA, for anybody outside the UK, is the Automobile Association rather than Alcoholics Anonymous. And they turned up to help me with my car about an hour and a half ago. And I messaged him saying, I might have problems getting to Brain Food if I have to wait here a long time. But anyway, I've got no idea why it's not working. Well, it is working now, but don't know why it didn't start. Strange.
Yep, time for an upgrade, Adam, mate. Time for an upgrade.
Maybe.
Okay, cool. Let's review the newsletter. Did you read it last week, Adam? And if so, what was interesting for you?
Oh, lots of things, to be honest. So it was a really good newsletter. I think the the one I want to talk about is first. Imagine you are the hockey coach and you are thinking about bringing a new player into the team. And instead of testing that player out, like coming to some training sessions or whatever, or watching some videos of them playing, you ask them about how they play and they tell you how they play. Well, that's not going to work. You need to know better than that. So that's effectively what we're doing when we rely on an interview to hire people. So I can't remember who the article was by, but it was an article saying that the interview is on its own, gets you about 9% of the information that you're going to need as to whether or not this person is going to be able to do the job or not. It suggested that, of course, interviews can be biased. We're looking for cultural fit, which is not necessarily the right thing to do. You get a really bad prediction around how they can perform. And what it's suggesting is that things like real tests, looking at their past work, for example, are much better things that we should do. So interview bad, proper tests, real world scenarios, much better.
Yeah, I think we all kind of intuitively agree with this, but I also think there's probably a couple of understated reasons why we persist with interviews. In the same way we persist with CVs, even though we all universally condemn them. There's probably something we haven't quite discussed about it. I've got a theory as to why we do them, but I haven't really articulated it properly. So maybe I'll write about that in an essay at some point. But it's all about actually less about the individual and more about the people doing the interview. So in other words, we want to create our own sense of assurance that this person's right, even though we kind of intuitively know that it's not an adequate a tool for assess performance, but we want to assess, we want to basically justify our own, if you like, more instinctive type of decision making. Anyway, like I say, haven't articulated properly, but I'll put some work into this and maybe I'll get it out on an essay. But yeah, read the this is a surprisingly good blog post by psychologytoday.com. Usually they've got really kind of sparse material, but this blog post actually goes into a bit of depth, and I thought it was really good. They also link back to some meta-analysis on the nature of job interviews, as to where that 9% number comes in from. So worth digging into that if you like academic reading as well. Okay, cool. Give us another one, Adam.
Right. Let's stick with the same type of theme. So imagine you are the head of the Olympics team, and you've got a brand which is everybody can come and get in the Olympics team. It's really straightforward. Like you can, you just can't turn up and you can all get a game. You can choose track and field, or you can get in the boating team, or you can get in the boxing team, or whatever you want. That's not really a good way of doing recruitment. And you probably don't know where I'm going with this. But anyway, Intuit's CEO put out a message saying, we're getting rid of roughly 1,050 people, and they're underperforming, and they're going to be more successful elsewhere. I thought all of that wording was really weird, but the suggestion that that's bad for Intuit's employer brand can only be answered by the people who were in the room when the decisions were made about why they're going to do that. That was not a knee-jerk press release. That was probably a highly thought out message which says Intuit is absolutely elite and we will only hire the absolute best people that we possibly can. That could have been a very active decision, which is perfect for what they want their employer brand to actually be. So there's a number of different ways of looking at this. And I wouldn't just look at this and go, they're stupid. Like, who's going to want to work for them? Well, not everybody gets into the Olympic team. Not everybody gets to work for McKinsey or Goldman.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you, and I think Bass and some other people making this point. So folks, I've just shared the link into the chat stream there. If you didn't know, Intuit, big software company, they made it 10%, I think, redundant. But it was an unusual press release by the CEO because he did actually give a reason for this. He didn't sort of give a platitude, but he actually said, look, they've been let go because they're not performing. And then obviously there's a massive internet pile-on saying that's terrible. All of these people are now sort of on the market and potentially carrying the mark of Cain around with them by saying that they're underperforming. But yeah, it may well be that that was a considered decision, and they kind of looked at the trade-off between potential EB damage, because you're going to get some negative PR on it, but also a very powerful signal internally to say, you know what, it's a kick up the arse. It's like, okay, everyone needs to step up. The reason why we've made that decision is because these are the weaker performers. Don't be a weak performer. So, it could well be that's the way. I mean, I'm not sure whether it was considered or not. Obviously, we don't have privy to the to the mindset. However, they didn't come back to apologize for it. So I'm more actually persuaded of your position on it, Adam. Maybe it was something well thought out. And it was like, yeah, there's a standard and you got to reach it. So, yeah.
I mean, there's another element to this, right? Which is that I firmly believe, I've said this for the last couple of years, I firmly believe that every major company is going to have a lot less people than it did in 2020 or in 2019. Like a lot less, because we can be far more productive with the technologies we've got access to today than we did before. So the alternative message from Intuit could have been, look, we don't need all these people anymore because we've worked out ways of doing things much, much easier. They maybe didn't want to frighten the world by saying, we're using generative AI to do like 50% of what humans were doing. That's probably not a great message either, right? That's an anti-human message, maybe. I don't know if it's worse or it's not, but this is another thing that may well have actually happened behind the scenes, and so it's like a dead cat strategy, right?
Yeah. What's the dead cat strategy, mate?
Well, that's when like the conversation's not going the way you want it to, so you throw a dead cat on the table, and nobody is talking about what they were talking about 30 seconds ago. They're all talking about the dead cat.
Yeah, I like that. I think we see a lot of that in politics, actually. Just scandalize things, inject some drama, and then move the conversation on. So yeah, absolutely right. Catherine, I think you're absolutely correct on that. How you offboard speaks volumes of the culture. I think what we're saying here is that perhaps they wanted to communicate exactly that. So that was the issue. Okay, give us one more, mate, before we get on with this.
All right. So I'm going to keep going with analogies, sort of. Starbucks used to be like this cozy, nice place that you could go and hang out with your friends and have a coffee. And now it's just another expensive coffee shop. So, that move's really hurt their business. Boeing made a series of small decisions in order to try and make more money, and that resulted in planes crashing. So Josh Berson's comments about this are, when you change your values, that's really bad for business. I think your counter argument to that was, when your business needs to change, you have to change your values to make that happen. I'm not sure. It was something like that. Anyway, I think your values need to remain the same. I was thinking this originally. I thought your values as an organization have to remain the same. However, we are in a highly changing world, and if you link that brain food to Sherm's announcement of we're going to be leading with inclusion. I mean, they did say equity is not getting dropped; it is a cornerstone of inclusion, and I think that there's an argument to say that's true, but at the same time, by deprioritizing it in the DEI or the EID, I think, which is what they had, like the way they communicated that was word soup. It was like really bad. But anyway, values and the E for equity, I think these two things are kind of linked.
Yeah, it is. it's an interesting one for a lot of reasons. I mean, firstly, it's probably a breakthrough live for this actually. Like, how do you actually do it when a company's values do change? So HR and TA within a business are not dictating this, but I think it's perfectly feasible to imagine a situation where CEO says, "Well, actually, we're dropping this, and drop it from your comms. We're changing our recruitment a little bit because we're evolving as a company." I think that's okay. I mean, ultimately, is it a betrayal of your earlier promise? Kind of. But it's also like companies do evolve. I mean, you can't just stay there. And if the company's crashing down based on your values, then all credit to you if you go down with your ship. But that's probably not what your job is as a CEO. You're there to try and make sure it keeps going. So the values are on the table. And the question is, how do you manage that? How do you make sure everyone's on board with it? At what point does it become deleterious? I mean, I think Burson's comment was very true. He was talking about, look, when values change, people's trust goes down. And, I think there are certain examples that you mentioned, Boeing, particularly conspicuously Boeing, that obviously went the wrong way. I think it's a lot to do with financialization, to be honest, where, companies go public and they end up sort of looking purely on shareholder value, shareholder capitalism, sort of say. You wonder whether that would have ever happened had Boeing remained, under the private ownership as it always was. So as you go to IPO, cost values are going to change. That's kind of as it's going to be.
My dad was the CEO of a public company, and he had 2 bullet points on his job description: keep the company independent and increase shareholder value. How he achieved those was entirely up to him.
Yeah. And that's the job, right? That's the job. So as soon as you change ownership, guess what? Values are going to change, mate. I mean, that's basically what's happened.
Companies aren't there to serve people, right? They're not. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Companies are not there to serve employees. So I don't want to say get rid of values and get rid of culture, or like a positive culture and all that sort of thing. Obviously, they're important, but everything needs to be building blocks onto the CEO or the boards, most of the boards' objectives for the organization.
Yeah, and that's true even if it's employee owned. I mean, you can get co-ops out there, or you can get companies out there that have a heavy component of workers owning the operation. But yeah, you can't just say to them, freeze in time. These are the values. So it's an interesting. It's a segue. I didn't realize we'd go down this route, but it's an interesting one how to deal with it. And from a HR and recruitment point of view, maybe worth trying to explore some a future topic on it. Anywho, that's about it. Let's move on to where we're at. Oh, by the way, yeah, the Sherman shoots are probably another breakthrough live if anyone fancies that. Although I think it'll get a bit tasty. I'm not sure whether it would get anybody, truly arguing either way. But we've got to play it carefully. Definitely happy to talk about it myself, anyway, right. 100 days. 100 days. You definitely don't know anything about this. Because you've been an entrepreneur for the last, decade or so. And probably the last time you got a new job, you didn't have a plan, mate.
Last time I got a new job was 2007.
Yeah, so it's irrelevant anyway, very dated. So let's bring on some of our guests and they can tell us all about it. We're going to bring on Saqib Khan. Go on.
I need to go there, remember. I've got to go to a very special performance of Willy Wonka by about 27-year-olds. So I need to drop it.
You have to bounce. You've done your job anyway, Adam. So that's all good. I will see you around, mate.
I will tune in later on and check out, because I love all the people coming onto the show just now, and I really want to find out what they're talking about. Thanks.
All right. See you later, Adam. All right, we've invited Saqib Khan. Saqib, you should have got, and we've invited Chantel as well. Chantel Jones, there she is.
Hey.
Looking marvelous, Chantel. What are you talking about?
No, it's not happening today.
Chantel told me on text earlier, say I'm really hungover. Please forgive me if I'm speaking bad crap. I say, listen. Doesn't matter. This is Brain Food Live. It all happens. And we have Lumi here as well. It's great. Saqib, you should have a pop-up on your... oh, there he is. He's coming on. Actually, whilst Keith's getting his camera on, Chantel, why don't we go you first? Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yes, of course. So, thanks for having me, Hung. I'm Chantel Jones. I have been in TA for 15 odd years, largely on the embedded and RPO side, and have now moved internal as global program manager for Nielsen IQ, which is an enterprise of 40,000 people. And my role is to kind of look after our work transformation projects. And that's everything from strategy right through to enabling our team. So yeah, I'm 8 weeks in, I think. So very
I
new.
was about to say, let's ask her how long you've been in. 8 weeks. That's perfect timing. We've got Saqib Khan here as well. Saqib, good to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself, who you are, what it is you do, and how long you've been doing it in your current employer?
Sure. Thank you, Hung. Hello, everyone. I'm Saqib Khan. I'm currently Senior TA Director at Paramount Global. I've been in recruitment, talent acquisition for the best part of 20 years now. Currently, I'm covering recruitment across EMEA, APAC region, and I manage a team of around 20.
Fantastic. And how long have you been working at Paramount, Saqib?
I'm only 7 weeks in, so still the new boy.
Still a new boy. Okay, cool. Great to have you on the show. Lumi, we can see you, but she can't see us or hear us, I think. Is that right? How strange. Let's just do one thing quick. I'm gonna actually just refresh the browser because we can see her. Everyone can see Ludmilla here, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
I think she can see us, but no, maybe she can't hear us. But no worries. Whilst Louis sort of fiddles with this, let's get on with the chat. Adriano, I'll bring you on sort of later because I want to get sort of one-on-one with you. Chantal, let's start with you on this. When you first got the job, firstly, elation, this is great, yada yada yada, and then it was like, okay, now this contract signed. When did you start like processing what have you got to do, and what was actually percolating through your mind as that was pre-boarding before you actually started?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I was in discussions around this role for quite a while because Lisa Ford, our global TA director, has some really good foresight of there might be a need for this role. So I was lucky that I felt quite prepared when kind of in that pre-boarding situation, just because we discussed it and fleshed the role out at length previously. But having said that, you still get all the emotionals, like imposter syndrome and all of those good things. So for me, I think what I did was I actually started trying to listen to content outside of our space just to get a different perspective. So listen to like a lot of change management and transformation podcasts, just so that I can try and go in with a bit of a different perspective. I didn't really have a lot of time from my last role into this role. So I think that was a good thing because it meant that I couldn't overthink and I just needed to start and trust myself and know what I was doing. So yeah, it was
That's a
pre-boarding for me was an interesting one because it was quite a unique kind of setup anyway.
Yeah, and it's an unusual role also. So it's interesting to it's a good tip immediately, folks. Don't firstly obviously get you're already immersed in TA or HR, whatever it is. That's all well and good, but understand that there's likely to be you being brought in to conduct change. In which case, some classic change management stuff may actually be more relevant or more interesting for you than the traditional sort of TA type work, which might be a little bit business as usual. So great tip there straight away. So Keep, I'll go to you in a sec, but we've got Lumi back, I think. Can you hear us okay, Lumi?
I can hear you.
Great, wonderful to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do? And if you can tell us like what it is you're currently potentially be doing.
Or Lumi, Ludmila, actually by original name. I'm in Finland now and it's super hot here for once. So if you ever tell me that it's cold place, I will remember that day. I'm in the TA space, but I'm actually more supporting people like Andrea or leadership by example. I'm not in the manager or leader position as such, but I have been part of Zalando in the past, and I was part at Ivan, super fast growing startup. And now I'm into the door to the new challenge. This topic of the onboarding is definitely on top of my mind and something that I'm preparing myself as well for.
Right. So you haven't actually started the new role, but it will be happening. So let's go to you on this. Like, what are you putting to? Have you got a plan in the pre-boarding stage? Like, what are you thinking about sort of getting to the position where you got the ability to really hit the ground running?
Knowing my own weak points or the points to grow, that I know that I'm usually super fast in jumping into the challenges and jumping into the proving that I'm good at where I have been hired for, hitting the targets, hitting everything that you can imagine, or maybe sometimes even fighting imposter syndromes that you show in yourself. So knowing that and taking into consideration my previous onboarding, which was 3 years ago, I'm trying to make a plan for myself to focus and take it slowly, to prioritize what I'm actually looking to do within the first months, making sure that I know the stakeholders, making sure that I know the business, making sure that I know the market right now, what their struggles, what keeps them awake. Is there something that I can actually take as a low-hanging fruit? And as there was mentioned before, the change management, is there something that I can bring with a fresh eyes while I can see what's working or not? But actually to give myself a time to get the proper understanding before I start to jump in and deliver something that maybe no one is even asking for.
Yeah, really, really good point. Again, like slow down. Because I don't think anybody these days is like casually just dropping into the new job. Everyone's aware of what the market's like. So the pressure, you put pressure on yourself to write, of course, I'm going to make impact. I'm going to be a brilliant hire. It's going to be amazing from day one that this is the right guy, the right girl that they've chosen. But actually, you got to take a breath and think, hang on, let's slow down. Let's understand exactly what it is that's required, and not you got to battle that internal false pressure which isn't quite there. Very interesting, Lumi. Saqib, let's go to you. You've been there 7 weeks, so similar time, so a little bit longer, I think, than Chantel. But let's. What are your thoughts on sort of that before you start type of approach? Like, did you have a plan going in before you started, and what was the sort of things that you would do again if you could?
Yeah, I mean, I was in a situation where I was in between work, so pretty unique, and what I had the opportunity to get a lot of sessions booked in prior to my start with the organisation. So I utilised that time to essentially have some pre-meetings with a lot of the senior stakeholders and counterparts, my peers that will be in the organisation. So I spent a lot of time meeting them, understanding the sort of challenges, understanding the opportunities, and I used that information and went away and actually swatted up. So a bit geeky, but I had time on my hands, so I thought, why not use it wisely and get up to speed, understand what the low-hanging fruit is, and then when I am on board, I can almost come to the table with recommendations from the word go. So essentially hitting the ground running. So it was a lot of investment at the front end, which enabled me to, when I joined, really come in and recommend some opportunities, some efficiencies from the word go.
So let me interrupt you there, Saqib. Very important point, actually. Like, are you actually employed and going directly to a new job, or have you left your ex company and then you've got time? Because that actually does determine how much time you've got to do the pre-boarding.
Exactly.
And as you say, you wisely spent it in already doing the stakeholder management, some of the listening to business and all that type of stuff, which is fantastic. So I guess the advice here is, look, you got to also understand your current circumstances. If you're currently working, you're like stacked at 120%, there is a limitation as to how much you can do before you join your next company. So your plan pre-boarding needs to be kind of arranged according to that. And by the way, you definitely need to give yourself a break between two things as well. Like, this is not about charging forward and all that. You're totally entitled to say you need a break between the jobs. So all of those things need to be a key factor in. Okay, cool. What are common mistakes that people make in the first 100 days of joining a new company? I'm not going to say whether you've made them before, but I think all of you have had like multiple jobs before in your career, right? So this is not your first or second job. So you've probably had more than a few where you've gone in and you think, actually, I'm not going to do that again because that didn't work. And I actually have a theory as to why. Does anything come to mind? I'll leave this to open to anyone who wants to say.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. I think one learn for me, especially given what we've gone through over the last few years with the pandemic, is that target operating model of your team, potentially overhiring. And I've had experiences where I've hired a certain volume in my team, and as a consequence of the downturn, had to make those people redundant. So what I would do is, I think what the learn for me is really focus on a target operating model within my team, so that I have a core model and complement it potentially with a flexible resource, rather than hiring multiple TAs to perform the role, and then when the market potentially does have another downturn, having to make them redundant. So for me, that's a big learn. And going forward, I'd probably look at focusing on that key model and then an embedded, augmented sort of flexible model, which I can flex according to peaks and troughs in the market.
Yeah, very interesting. So it's part of the leadership, isn't it? Where you might have to do some team building, some recruitment to there's often turnover of staff when a new leader comes in. But perhaps we're all very sensitive now as to the sort of to get people with more flexibility. And that may work for RPOs for sure, and it should help with embedded type companies, and also a lot of people that might work or prefer to work in a more flexible way. So I guess the message is don't overcommit in that charge forward. Lumi, Chantel, any thoughts as to sort of things that you've in the first 100 days not to do? Now that you're both experienced vets of getting new jobs.
I'd say there's a couple that spring to mind. The first one is, I think it's really easy when you start a new role to switch off your like networking actions that you do, and like you get so insular that you forget that actually you still need to nurture your community. I think it's a tap that always needs to be on, and it's often turned off as soon as we start a new role. And it's hard, right? Because you're trying to bed in somewhere else, and you're probably feeling a little bit overwhelmed. But crafting out some time in your diary to keep nurturing that community, I think, is really important. It stops you from having to rebuild every time you might need to tap into that community, whether that's because you want help with a problem that you currently have, whether it's in 2 years down the line actually you want to move again. So I think that's an important one. And then one, just personally speaking, is trying to rush from current state to future state. So I think as TA people, we really want to show impact and get that validation that we're making a difference. And actually I think we can rush the process of really understanding our current state, what our stakeholders are thinking and feeling, what's really important to them, really looking into our people, process and technology. I think we can go surface level and then we jump to solutions quite naturally. I have done so in the past anyway. So for me, I'm spending a lot more time there. I'm still focusing on outputs. I'm still focusing on adding value right now, but equally, I'm not rushing that analysis piece.
Yeah, the discovery part is super important, but also and obviously the networking side. Like, does everyone get the psychology better? I think we're all familiar with this. Join a new team, it's all hands in, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, you're totally in. That's right to do that, but you've got to bear in mind that the company's hiring not only you but also your network knowledge and your social capital and all of the contacts you have in industry. They need to be nurtured. That's part of the value you're adding to the new company. So yeah, make sure you don't neglect those. And by the way, we've seen this, haven't we? We've seen people who get a new job and suddenly they disappear. It's like literally down. Where the heck is that guy? Yes, they're working hard and that's great. but it's probably not the smartest thing to completely isolate and become insular, as you say, Chantal. Good stuff. Alumi, you got any thoughts on this? Things that you wouldn't do in the new job, that you've learned the hard way?
Just the same, observing and learning and giving the space to others. Be humble and open. That's like the true partnership, that you actually become the business partner, that you understand the business needs again, like you actually learn the first days, and then definitely aligning the goals along that. That's not your goals or team goals, it's the business goals on the bigger scale.
How long is you both mentioned discovery here, so let's go there. How long should the discovery period be? And Saqib, we'll include that pre-boarding period where you had, the one-to-ones and all the rest of it. I think we're all familiar with that's probably the first thing you should do, like speak to all of the key stakeholders. So firstly, how do you identify who the key stakeholders are? Is there a method to doing that?
Well, maybe I could jump, or I did,
go ahead.
unless Saqib has. I was lucky enough that previous company had well-structured organization chart where I could see and understand, like working on the tech product, what the product is, what are the key stakeholders, what the product, like kind of see the big mind map and understand who would be the right people. And then when you start to think that when we're talking about the product, if we're talking about the headcount, who are the ones who are giving money? So the people in finance, understanding financial statements. So you're pretty much building that picture. And that's also takes you out of the TA silo. So you're not only the part of the HR team, but you understand the budget topics, you understand the product topics, you understand the language that stakeholders speak. And taking that picture and current onboarding as well, that I received already pre-onboarding. On one hand, it's overwhelming sometimes that I'm exactly taking my break and I don't want to work just yet. But I do take the sneak peeks and like, okay, this is my team, this is the stakeholders, these people I can still already hunt or look at LinkedIn and see what they're doing, what their interests. So I already build a relationship with them. And then once I come, I have a chance not to spend like, say, 2 months, but shorten that time. And then it's really depends on the organization. Working as a startup, I'm not talking about 30, 60, 90 days. It goes back to the days. It's like 1, 2, 3 weeks. And then you're up and running because all the stakeholders you learn, they might have changed within 2, 3 months because the company grew from 100 people to 7.
Yeah, and the reality is no one's got 3 months to do the discovery, right? I mean, there is got to be, yes, you've got to do discovery, but you've got to obviously show output and action straight away. That's a political thing as well as it's a real thing as well. Chantal, I thought you were going to try and wanted to say something there when Louis was talking about, trying to identify the stakeholders and what have you. Was that right? Or
you know me too well. I think just by looking at my face, you can see where my mind's going. I agree in regards to it depends on the size of business, right, and its global footprint and how long things are going to take. But one thing I think is common across all business sizes is we always look to identify those key stakeholders. But for me, it's not just those people who you're business partnering with. It's trying to understand who are the detractors, who are influencers, who are ambassadors, because I think sometimes you need to build yourself a little army to really make change, and it can be really powerful to actually identify people who aren't necessarily that key stakeholder because they can still help with your message and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. So I think org structures are great, but actually I think you need to network through the business as well and really try and understand the nuances of what people are thinking and feeling within that business. And with the detractors, it's understanding why do they think that way. Is it reasonable? Is it fair? If so, what can we do to change that? If it's unreasonable and unfair, how can we work with that person to try and change their perception on whatever it may be? And then try and collect as many ambassadors as you can. If you're a change maker, which TA are, you need it goes beyond your team and beyond your stakeholders.
Until John's gone straight into sort of a conflict mindset. I love it. But no, I see what you mean. There are going to be people that for some reason don't like your approach, don't see you as a change agent. They don't want to change. There could be lots of, and these could be people within your team, by the way. So let's say there's a change of leadership in team. There's a lot of residual loyalty, perhaps with the old boss. That's always going to be the case. You come in, inevitably, some of those, I would say detractors is one term, but maybe people are not convinced of your mission. They're individuals that are absolutely worth thinking about as well. We'll talk about that in a bit, actually. Like, how do you handle existing team members? But I want to bring Saqib in on how do you identify the stakeholders, because it seems that you did that in some way. Did Paramount furnish you with a list of people and say, look, speak to these, or did you have to just navigate your way around and try and figure it out yourself?
Not really. No, I wish I was as lucky as Lumi, who had an org chart to go by. Any organisation I've been in, whenever I've asked for an org chart, I've been looked at very blankly. It just doesn't happen. I don't know what it is. I mean, it's one quick fix, but it just doesn't happen. But I just had to ask, and it was just leaning and leveraging the resources around me. So each of the HRBPs essentially manages a select group, right? And then looking at the VPs of HR, so who are their sort of key stakeholders, and then understanding the challenges that those business units are facing. So getting some background information, so when I am then speaking to them, acknowledging that the challenges that they're currently going through, but then also maybe trying to volunteer some sort of ideas, some solutions, not quick fixes, but just some high level holistic views of what we could do to approach those sort of challenges. But essentially it's just speaking to people, networking as much as humanly possible, given the time that you have. So my first 3 or 4 weeks, I had literally no white space in my diary. It was just back-to-back meetings. So meeting everyone and anyone. It can be a bit of a challenge because I'm not the best with names. I rely on recognizing faces. So for me, just making those notes, ensuring that I've captured as much as I can, and then I have something to reference is what I go by. And that's served me well in the past.
You know what? And the rise of these meeting note takers, I think, are really important. The AI note takers that you have per meeting, I think Teams has a native one. I'm using Fireflies for Google Meets, and it's like, you know what, that actually really helps, because it means that you've got an archive of these conversations. And if you do forget, if you've had 100 conversations, you're going to forget, but you can search through and you can understand, okay, now I get it. And perhaps even record the conversations with permission of the other side, so that you've got this archive and you don't have that embarrassing but necessary conversation of going back to a stakeholder and trying to reconfirm things. That's obviously not great, but you should do that rather than assume things otherwise. Okay, cool. We've got more questions to ask. I want to ask one more that's really important. Inheriting existing team. So we have a situation where incumbent has left, good or bad reasons, we don't know. But there's a team that you didn't put together, and you've inherited that. And how do you make sure that you've kind of how do I put this? How do you make sure that you've connected with them in the right way, so that they're going to give you the right information and potentially the right performance going forward? Any tips or techniques, should I say, that you could offer to the audience there? Again, I'll throw it open to anyone to answer this.
I'm an individual contributor, right? So I haven't inherited a team. However, I do work very closely with my regional TA leads on every project. So we are a team essentially. So it's hard for me to speak to this one. I would say that for me, it's just almost doing like a bit of a SWOT analysis with them, and understanding what's important to them and what drives them. I think it's just a bit of management 101. But to your point of like inheriting a team that might be disgruntled, or it's been a hard 18 months for TA, maybe they're feeling a bit burnt out, I would say that's just meeting them with empathy and trying to understand what they need and how you can support. But yeah, this particular question for my current role is a tricky one, because I'm a little island, which I'm happy about.
Sometimes that's the best place. Chantal, a bit of a permanent moat around you. That makes sense to me. Okay, Lumi, you want to give this a shot? I mean, if you enter a new team or whatever, how do you make sure make friends with them, I guess, so that people
I
don't
will
feel.
pivot it. I will pivot it a bit because, again, the landscape, the last 3 years have been everywhere exciting. I had 5 different managers changed on different levels, from the manager, from the VP, director, like all different levels. 5 of them within 3 years. And what I would wish, as I see that the persons or people who were coming exactly with empathy, first they would learn all the team members, what the team members struggle with, what they're good at, their dreams, their passions, and utilize, because I have seen so many people losing this spark in our team when they actually suddenly would stop doing something, or they suddenly would put on something that they haven't been aware of. So the new leaders come in, they know how to do it, they make a lot of changes, and the rest of the teams that have been there for 3-4 years, they're a bit in the shock, to say it politely.
That's a really good point.
I'm not sure.
No, friendship's not really a thing. It's a wrong term that I use for sure, but it's a very important point. Like, what is the history of the turnover in that organization? If they've had lots of turnover, I think every time there's turnover, there's probably some demoralization in current team. And they can be really battered around. The one man. I remember when first time I had a job. Once upon a time I was employed.
You had a job?
I once had a run where 5 weeks I had 5 different managers. I felt like I was being passed around like an unwanted stepchild. So yeah, it's very important to know what is the history, how long is the tenure. Maybe the previous incumbent had been there for a long time, so there's another dynamic you got to think about. So a little bit of like social analysis needs to go in before you know sort of what exactly is happening, and then I guess you go in there with an open question, like listen to what's good or bad about their situation, how it wants to improve. Saqib, I think you wanted to come in on some of this. Did you inherit a team actually in Paramount, or was that a situation or not?
Yeah, I did. I inherited a direct team as well as an RPO team via Randstad, and my philosophy behind it is just treat everyone the same and ensure they feel part of the actual team itself, rather than seeing themselves as an RPO function. And that's essentially how I've got the best out of the guys currently. But historically, I mean, I always lead by example. I try to lead by example. And I know it sounds basic, but just spending time with the team, spending time with them formally, but as well as offline, going for a coffee, just going for lunches, just building that sort of common ground, understanding their personal lives a bit more. It creates a bit, they feel more comfortable and feel a bit more part of the team and settled. But I try to instill a culture of psychological safety within my team. So I don't come in saying I know everything, I'm all singing or dancing. I try to instill that safety piece so they can challenge and they can come to the table with ideas and share where they think things aren't going so well, or they want to volunteer some ideas, because I think that breeds an efficient process and it builds the right culture where people come to the table. So for me, that's where I've got the best out of the team, but also just bringing them on the journey, helping them understand what the strategy looks like, getting them involved at the strategy at the earliest possible opportunity, whether it's in place already or if it's part of a new strategy that you're building. Help them understand their place and what they're there to do, and how they're instrumental to the success of the strategy through shared values, through the culture and purpose of the organization. That has really helped and supported me to accelerate success with the team and building a high performing team, because they feel engaged, they feel part of it, they feel responsible and accountable to deliver, and it's achieved the desired results.
Yeah, fantastic stuff, Saqib. You gotta basically build the social relation, the trust relationships, which aren't there because you're a new person, right? So you're coming in. Bear in mind, if there's an existing team, chances are they've got trust relationships between each other, but you're the newcomer coming in, so you don't have those trust relationships. Very important you do that as a group, but also one-to-one independently, also spending time. Caroline mentioned something very exactly this in the chat there. It's like sometimes the sort of manager comes in, they're charging forward, again, the pressure to do, and ultimately being ignored as an inherited team member, like not even met. And it's like, okay, that's not really going to encourage you to really back what that new leader is going to be doing. So there has to be, you got to be confident enough in yourself to create your own space to say, I'm going to meet all of the rest of this team and get to a point where I know what's driving them, what's pissing them off, in fact, and what it is that they want to achieve in their careers and what have you. Okay, cool. Listen, we're flying through this show, and Adriana, I'm going to bring you on in a sec. But before we do that, we always do this in the middle of every conversation, because Brain Food Live needs to be a conversation starting show, not a conversation ending one. Super important, by the way. We do this. I think Rob and Malay has already done this, but grab your LinkedIn URL, share it in the chat stream there, and make sure you connect with everyone else who's doing the same. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, I think there's 20 LinkedIns being fired off right now. So fantastic to see huge distribution of LinkedIn Live. That's sort of what we should do more of. If you're watching it in any of those places, grab your LinkedIn URL and just stick it in a comment, and then just make sure you connect with everyone else who's doing the same. No reason why you couldn't walk away from today with 20, 30, 40 connections that care about this concept of, creating a 100-day plan prior to sort of when you start your new job. So make sure you go ahead and do that. Okay, folks, before we let you go, let's give one recommendation you would give to someone who is about to start a new job. Lumi, I know that's kind of you, but let's rewind back as to someone who's on the job search right now. They're going to get a job, they're going to get an offer. What piece of advice would you give them once they've got that job and that offer? What should they take forward for the first 100 days? What should they be doing? Saqib, why don't we kick off with you on this?
I'll just echo what I said just a moment ago. I think getting the team on side is fundamental. I think really understand the team, understand the motivations, and bringing them on the journey as early as possible will ensure that the overall strategy is a success, because they need to believe in it to be able to implement it. And you can't do it on your own. There's no I in team, so it has to be a togetherness.
Yeah, fantastic stuff, Saqib. How about you, Chantel? Your thoughts on this bit of advice for someone who's about to get a new job?
Flabbergasted at how quickly the time's gone. I agree that the team, getting team on board is the biggest thing. So to try and add something to that, I would say if something doesn't seem right or look right, or you would do it in a different way, instead of just trying to charge forward and solving for that issue, maybe really try and understand why they're doing it in that way and why they think it's important and why that works, because we're so quick to jump to solutions that actually with a bit more digging you might unpack more problems, or actually you might unpack that this is the best way and it's just not great and you have to rethink something else. So I would just say try not to rush into that solution based mode, and try and really understand, to Timi's point earlier, really understand the why behind what's working well and what isn't working well.
Yeah, exactly. Solution has its place. First thing you got to do is listen, and then signal to the other side, the other person, or the other function that you have heard what they've said before you charge forward and say, I've figured it out. Okay, Lumi, final word on you. What would you? I guess it's advice to yourself here. What would you say? You should be doing once you've secured a job opportunity and you're about to move into a new role?
I think Chantel and Saqib already said almost everything, but the one thing to add, just be open-minded, no expectations, communication. I personally believe that expectation is really bad pitfall. You expect, or we expect something, communicate, speak it out, be open-minded about everything. And that's at least my plan for the next 100 days.
No worries. Fantastic. Keep an open mind, folks. And the difference between open mind and closed mind is, look, is there anything information out there that's going to change your mind currently on what you're going to do? If the answer is no, then guess what? You got a closed mind. Okay, that's brilliant. I want to let these guys go. I'm going to bring Adriano on now. So thank you very much, Lumi. Congratulations on the new role, by the way. Let me know how you get on with that. Great to see you, Saqib. I hope everything's going to be okay with you. Hopefully chat with you soon, mate. And
Thank
Chantel, good to see you as well. You've now got the opportunity. Just rest your gentle head, nurse that hangover, and get yourself a nice sleep.
I can't believe you publicly shamed me like that.
It's not shame. It's not shame. It's gentle ribbing. But all right, we'll catch up soon, okay?
Thank you. See ya.
Okay, Adriano's coming on. Where is he? There he is. I'm going to accept him. Boom. Hang around for this, folks. This is going to be interesting because... Oh, there he is. Adriano, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, Hung. Thanks for having me on. All good.
Cool. No worries. Thanks for being patient, man.
No worries.
Great to see you. Let's introduce yourself. Who are you? What it is you do, Adriano?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. Adriano. I'm co-founder of Move. We're an embedded RPO that supports technology businesses. So caveat, straight off the bat, I haven't been head of talent acquisition. But in my capacity as an embedded RPO founder, we've done a lot of these early deployments with businesses where we have to show value quickly. So I think that's why I'm on, I guess.
No, absolutely. And in fact, that's invaluable information because that relationship you have as RPO, I think is very, very analogous to what it is. You know, we talk about business partnership, we talk about providing services. It's actually very more similar than perhaps would otherwise be the case. But Adriano, I mean, you've kind of been producing some amazing content, by the way. Follow Adriano on LinkedIn if you haven't already, because he periodically comes out with some really interesting bits of work. And you actually wrote about this, didn't you? You constructed a one-pager about the 100-day plan. Before we kind of screen share that and show people what it's all about, how did you know what to put into that? I mean, was it obvious to you already? Did you already have this as a tool for the business? Or what?
So this is, I looked at it through the lens of obviously a new head of TA. What we do is over the last 7 years, we've worked with around 100 plus businesses. 50% of those don't have a head of talent acquisition. So we come on board and act as the head of TA for a period of time. So all these findings are for us generally condensed, but we've extrapolated them out to 90 days. So it's things that over the years we've had to implement to ensure that they keep paying for our services early. So there's like two streams. There's show value quickly through getting some hires over the line and showing CVs. And then there's the other one, which is build an infrastructure to leave them better off than when we found them. And it's always a real kind of challenge balancing those two things. And I think that 90-day plan covers that a little bit. So what generally clients want is, high quality applicants, but that's a lagging indicator of other things working well. And so one thing that really changes our approach is how TA or problem aware is the client? Like, do they know what is involved in a hire? And that really affects our messaging in the early points of the partnership as well, which I guess is relevant also to new heads of TA. It's like, how aware and progressive is the business in its knowledge of what you do day to day? And I think that really affects how you position the solutions that you put in place as well. So there's loads of stuff we've had to learn around kind of showing value, but not throwing, shit at the wall early just to show some kind of early results. It's a real kind of balancing act.
I love some of the language you're using there. How problem aware are the stakeholders? So this is part of the reason why the commercial edge sometimes helps because you've won the deal, and by the way, if you're an RPO, typically the deal isn't just like, oh, here's £1 million straight off the beginning. It's like you got to prove your spurs. So it's high pressure all the way through, and usually it's a small bite first and then extension onwards. So you've got hyper motivation to do a great job. So I love this idea here. So there's two things that you've mentioned. Number one, how problem aware. So have a think about, do these people know how painful it is to recruit anybody? If not, you've got to kind of fill in those gaps, because if they assume, oh, it's like this, it's not like this. It's going to compromise your ability to meet expectations. And secondly, this dual strand. How can you kind of create the early wins to give yourself some room to do the strategy, because it's almost like I liken it to like a football match, Adriano. It's like you've got to kind of establish your physicality in the game before you can play around. You know, it can't be nicey. You got to like establish, okay, this is how we're going to do it. So you got to give those early wins. How do you identify what is a suitable early win, and not just, as you say, randomly sticking a few candidates in?
Yeah, exactly. Like doing a few 2-footed challenges and then hoping you get to see the second half. It's a bit of
the Vinnie Jones method of RPO.
Exactly. It should be our slogan. I think, firstly, everyone's mentioned this multiple times. I won't say it again. Like, obviously, what are the business goals? Looking at those through different stakeholders' lenses. So what do they care about? And then from all those conversations, which we do pre-deployment usually before we're charging, we've got some idea of what people care about in that business. And then we try and map it out on what will have high impact, low cost being like actually pure spend or time investment from the business. Like, does it take up a lot of bandwidth, or can we just get on with it and it will show value quickly? So that's a really simple framework that we use. So that guides us early. And then the other ones are more longer term, which generally are very, very hard to sell. So a lot of companies think they already do a good job in terms of candidate experience and process and employer branding. And you come in and go, we've identified these issues, but they're not really open-minded hearing that right then and there. So those longer term, really high impact, but quite high cost or labor intensive projects come in secondary. So I'm thinking of things like activating hiring manager networks through social media posting, getting their messaging right, sorting out their question banks and scorecards, all that stuff that if you start doing it 2 to 4 weeks in and no CVs are coming through, you're gonna get people breathing down your neck. So yeah, I think high impact, low cost is a really good one, and definitely what doesn't take up bandwidth from the stakeholders in the business.
All right, 2 brilliant ideas. The last 2, let's repeat that. High impact, low cost. So these are the classic sort of low hanging fruit, but what are they? There's low hanging fruit that's rotten. Like, there's no point doing stuff and placing a few candidates that aren't actually particularly critical. What are the pain points? Can you make some early progress there? Let's get on with it. It's almost like this is triage mode. So you got to go into triage, sort that out, but then at the same time, you can start the process with the strategy. Absolutely excellent stuff. Adriano, let's flash up the one pager. I thought that was really good. Basically, there should be a share button at the bottom of your screen. Share something. You see the arrow pointing up.
Oh, me, sorry.
Yeah. You got to do it yourself, mate.
Oh, right. Okay. Share something. Share screen.
Yeah. Share screen. And basically, if you can then flick over to the PDF or the one pager, it might be a good thing for people to look at. I think it'll happen soon if.
Sure. Can you see my screen there?
Not yet.
Let me. I tell you what, I can put it in the in the chat if you like. I can't
put it in the chat, but do try and share screen anyway.
One moment, because it's on. I've got it on a different tab. I'll put it in the chat here, and then maybe someone else can share it because I don't have. There we go.
I'll tell you what, maybe I can share it, Adriano.
Yeah, I've got it. I can access it in a minute. I've got it in. Here we go. Okay, let me share my screen. Let me share my screen, and it's a link post. Yeah, here we go. All right, is that visible?
Yes, it is. Something is. Let me just expand screen on that. Okay, let's.
Cool.
So what
is that okay?
With the sheet? Yeah, I think you can see it.
Okay, awesome. So the core metrics bit is I'd say I'd flag that initially. So how do you decide what to focus on when you're starting with a new client or with a new employer? One thing I didn't add in there is you need to benchmark historical metrics, which I didn't put in place. So what are the historical recruiting data that you're working with, and how can you over time improve them, of course, and also what are the current real-time benchmarks for companies in similar phases or growth stages. Obviously, we've got access to that being an embedded RPO, but there is information out there as well. So I think that's a good way to start in terms of what metrics are you tracking and what are you going to target for those particular metrics. And then the 3 sections on the left, you've got audit, which your guests all mentioned already. Speak to stakeholders, don't move in too quickly, identify the business goals, and start to understand really what it is that the business needs, and speak to different stakeholders and look at it through their lens rather than your TA lens, which generally no one really understands or cares about. Implementation, month 2. So you start kind of deploying some of the initiatives that you deem high value and low cost. And then as well as maybe some longer term initiatives like hiring manager enablement and training. And then after you've operationalized those things, then the scale section is where you really kind of supercharge what you've already put in place. And we found that there's a lot more that goes into each individual point, but this has been a really good framework for us over the years.
Yeah, I love it. And you know what? I like the design of it is so important, because people don't need at this point, if you're head of TA, you don't need a 30-page, a guidance doc. You need to have like a quick, you need to have a quick checklist, understand what you're doing, have a look at this every day and think, you know what, you can amend it, you stick stuff in, stick stuff out, you can check box it out and all the rest of it. Really wonderful document. And I think this is just on your on LinkedIn, isn't it?
Shout out quickly to Chris, my business partner, who is a Canva whiz. So he put the framework into that design.
Did he actually design that?
I did the content and the boxes, and he designed all the colors, the headings. So I did the kind of like the wireframe, and he designed it.
I'm loath to give Chris any credit, mate, but I'm gonna have to, aren't we? So no, that's great. Listen, let's stop sharing screen there, Adriano. Wonderful to see that visually, and I think a useful tool. Like I say, there's going to be a lot of people that will end up stepping into the leadership role. Doesn't have to be head of TA. Could just be you coming in as a solo recruiter. In fact, that document will still be useful. So yeah, very, very important. Okay, last question. Last sort of tip from you. The same question that I asked the guys before. If you could give one tip for a newly incoming head of TA or recruitment leader about to start a new job, what would you say to them in their first 100 days they have to get right?
I think the general theme was, I think, don't go too quickly, but I think you do need to pick something that you can shift the needle on in the first 90 days. So I think pick something that you can show at the end of that say, look, I've done all the strategy, I've spoken to the business, I understand your needs, I'm settled in, I love everyone, you love me, but I've actually done this. So maybe what is that low-hanging fruit initiative that you can display at the end of it? Because that's the way I look through it, right? You've got to show value really quite quickly. So I would say pick that one thing that you're going to show off at the end of the 90 days, whether that's fixing the top of funnel, for instance, or the candidate journey, something that you have control over that doesn't need crazy amount of like sign off. That would be my one bit of advice. All the other advice is phenomenal and super valid. And I'll just add that one bit, say, what are you going to pick? And then try to achieve that.
No, really good, Adriano. Okay, fantastic stuff. Great to have you and join us for this session, Adriano. We'll have to get you back, show some more of those. A wonderful one. Yeah, you got loads of them, so they're amazing. Publish a book, man. I think it's worth doing. Get Chris on the camera a bit more. All right, Adriano, you have a good weekend, mate.
Thanks, you too, mate. See you later.
Fantastic stuff. There he is, Adriano Herdman, and also a wonderful panel. We could obviously continue talking about the 100-day plan. Loads more to go on this. And as I say, hopefully we can do a part 2 with more people getting new jobs. And I hope that's going to be the case for the rest of 2024. This is it, folks. We'll be back next week. We're going to be talking about how to hire for a chief people officer. Have you ever done it? Well, some of us are trying. I think it's a really interesting project. Firstly, this person might end up being your boss. So how does that work when you're hiring someone like this? And secondly, what is the technique? I mean, do these people respond to LinkedIn messages? Probably not. How does it feel when you're a sourcer contacting a chief people officer? Like, what is the mechanism for doing that? We've got some wonderful guests to join us for us. We've got some exec search headhunters that work agency side. We've also got some in-house sort of exec search people. We've got CPOs themselves going to talk about it. And we've actually got a couple of people that are actively looking for a CPO right now. So lots of interesting chat as ever on Breakthrough Live. That is next week, folks. So make sure you sign up for that show. If you enjoy this type of conversation, of course, you can follow the channel on Crowdcast. If you're watching this on any of the LinkedIns, I'm always LinkedIn living on Friday at 2 p.m. So if you're interested in this, you can follow my personal page, and that basically gives you notification whenever I go live. So make sure you go ahead and do that. Okay, that's about it, everyone. I hope you're all having a very good weekend. We will see you next week.